saw a familiar face walking on the avenue. Both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced like old friends often do.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung Ho. It's January 3rd, 2019. I'm here with a special guest, Frank Romeo. This is, I think, our fifth show. We're concentrating on post-traumatic stress disorder, but of course that means we're going back 50 years to Vietnam, and what happened to Frank, and what happened to me, and what happened to other people. So I want to just bring you up to date about Frank's background, because everything that happened to a person in war has happened to him, and he's still here. And he's literally going to take a walk to educate us about what's been going on, actually been going on for 50 years with us, but it's still going on. Anyhow, I want to start out, I'm sorry, I want to know, where'd you go to high school?
Oh, you want to go way back?
Yes, I just want to, yeah.
All right. Well, I graduated from Bayshore High School in 1967, and I immediately went into the military, into the Army. The draft was coming. I was very athletic. I was put in a special unit, a search and destroy covert type of unit. It was only in existence for 4 years. And I was separated from my unit on a mission into Cambodia. I was separated from my unit, and I was attacked by the Viet Cong, and I was shot 7 times. And from there, and my recovery time, coming back to the United States, I wound up in Japan, and then eventually back to the United States. I was in the hospital for a year. I became addicted to drugs. I got busted for taking drugs after I got out of the hospital by the military, and I was actually discharged from the United States Army from a prison cell. I was dishonorably discharged. I was busted at West Point, and I had to appeal it. I had to hire a civilian lawyer, and then get a military lawyer, and then a tribunal, and go back to West Point and have it reversed. And I began showing symptoms, the classic symptoms that we know today of PTSD. I didn't know it at the time. There was no such thing as PTSD. There was Vietnam War syndrome. There was depressive neurosis. I was called any number of things for 3 decades. But I showed the classic symptoms of PTSD: anger, rage, couldn't hold down a job. I had difficulty with my relationship.
Drug abuse,
alcohol abuse. I continued with the drugs until I finally came to terms with it in midlife. And in midlife, I began to use art as a form of therapy. I began to create artwork. I searched out other artists, other veteran artists around the country. I put together quite an impressive collection. And then I began to teach. I realized that I was documenting American history through art. And I was documenting the emotional history of our country.
I got a couple of questions. First of all, the Viet Cong left you because they thought you were dead.
Correct.
And you didn't recover until about 30 days later in Japan.
Correct. I was unconscious for 30 days.
And people should know that we have American hospitals in Japan for us that get wounded overseas.
Correct.
And they're supposedly very good hospitals. I don't know.
Camp Zama, Japan. I went to Camp Zama, Japan, and Camp Zama was built by the Japanese for their soldiers during World War II. During the United States occupation of Japan, we took over most of the country, and we maintained these hospitals. And Camp Zama, Japan finds its history back before World War II. And it was a tremendous facility. We needed it desperately. And that was our main halfway point back to the United States. I was critically wounded. I couldn't travel. I needed to spend time at a facility that was capable of handling my wounds, keeping me alive, before the big trip back to the States. And that was Camp Zama, Japan. It was a first-class hospital for the military, and it's still there.
All right, so you got first aid, you got first-rate care for your wounds, your physical wounds.
Mm-hmm.
Did anyone there say to you, you're going to have some problems, emotional or psychological problems?
No,
Nothing.
there was no talk. There was no one to talk to. There was nobody. Don't forget, I'm pretty badly wounded. It took me quite a long time to even regain the physical act of being able to talk. I was shot through the face. So then when I came back to the United States, there was absolutely no detoxing. There was no talk of therapy. I never saw a psychiatrist. For what I had gone through and lived through, there was no help whatsoever. And that includes after I got out of the military and then going to the VA. It was a drug factory. Back then, they didn't know what to do with us.
So we had hundreds of thousands of young men that stepped out of a jungle and they were back home.
Correct.
But if they were wounded, they went to the VA hospitals.
Correct.
And then they went from the hospital and they're outside.
Right.
And nobody's told them there might be a problem with adjusting.
Never. We were basically self-medicating.
But the problem is that we had a lot of suicides.
We had a tremendous amount of suicides. And we held a rate for suicides out of any group in history, unfortunately, up until now. Now the suicide rate is 22 a day. And that's part of my education programs, is to bring awareness to that. Bring awareness that we have 22 suicides a day in the veteran community. And that's just unacceptable.
You know something, think about if we had been educated back then and told, look, everyone changes when you're out there. You're going to come back different. Mm-hmm. They might have cut the suicide rate in half.
They might have
would help.
They would have certainly helped. They would have helped me. I was a basket case, for decades. I was just, floundering around. And then, when I came to terms with it and I began to realize what I was doing with my artwork, and I was documenting the history of our country, the emotional history of our country, and the story of PTSD, I began to travel around the country and talk to people about PTSD. So I've been dealing with PTSD for 50 years. That's longer than any clinician practicing today. And I've been teaching it and talking about it to anyone who will listen for the last 30 years.
Well, the other thing is that there was no such thing as PTSD until I think the
early 90s.
Early 90s?
Correct.
There
Early
was no
90s.
such thing.
No. But it's not that it was invented in the early 90s. It was there. They just called it something different. You got to remember, the Vietnam War was a new type of war. This wasn't two armies banging heads and the last guy standing wins. This was underground, covert, secret type of warfare. We had the CIA doing secret things. We had the enemy doing secret things. You didn't know who the enemy was. This is the beginning of psychological warfare, coupled with the physical act of war. So every war has two fronts. It has the physical and a psychological front. This is the beginning of psychological warfare as we know it today, of spinning wars, of secret. Iraq and Afghanistan, they don't know who the enemy is. It's confusing. So this psychological type of warfare, this was the beginning of it. And Vietnam was a new war that we didn't know how to handle. 8 million Vietnam veterans come home. They didn't know what to do with us. They didn't know how to talk to us. They didn't associate any problems. They had no concept of who we were. Thus, it was, again, the perfect storm for PTSD to develop, because we went underground.
Something else that was really horrible, a lot of people don't realize this, but when the veterans came home from Second World War, they had an incredible GI Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about 8 million of them went to college, something like that.
And bought houses.
Everything.
And had houses built for them, the Levitt houses. I mean, there was just so much that they saved the world. It was the greatest generation. We
And
were spit on.
when we came home, and I applied for the educational benefits, it turned out they had cut back the GI Bill really way back.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
they really, what they gave wasn't enough to go to school.
Right.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
I would think there were very few vets who were able to go on to college
Right.
or law school like I
Yeah.
did,
Yeah.
because you,
You know, and then you have the PTSD end of it. I couldn't go to school. I was a basket case. I was a drug addict. I liked drinking and taking drugs and getting high, and that's how I self-medicated myself. And so there's no way I could sit in a classroom with PTSD, even though I didn't know about it for decades, you know, until midlife. And then what am I going to do? I have a family. I'm going to go back to school in midlife. There was no way for me to get an education in the condition I was in. And that's just not me. That's the case of a good percentage of our veterans. And we took menial jobs until something else came along, and that was my case. You know, I did everything from drive a taxi to loading docks and did everything I could to feed my family. And, you know, I just couldn't sit in a classroom. There was no way I was able to do that.
it was difficult for me to go back to a classroom.
Yeah, I could imagine.
I didn't fit. I
Yeah.
was probably one of the oldest people in the classroom. You know, they were all like
Yeah,
21, 22,
Yeah.
and I was already approaching 30.
yeah,
You know,
Yeah.
and they had no idea that I was a vet.
yeah.
So, and I didn't like law school because they were teaching by intimidation, and I didn't need to be intimidated to learn something.
Right, yeah, really.
You know, I was too old and too.
I needed a kind word. I needed a helping hand.
Yeah.
You know, and I felt that way, and that's when I decided to teach. I don't want anyone, any young person in this country to go through and live through what I lived through. I don't want anyone to ever do that. And that's the premise of why I teach. That's the premise of why I travel around the country talking to people. And that's the basis of my programs and my education programs. I don't want anyone to ever live through what I lived through. And so I decided to take it upon myself to spread the word and to teach. And I'm relentless in it. I don't give up. And I've been doing it for 30 years now.
You're trying to reach young people
Yeah.
before they go into service.
Correct.
And trying to reach Americans that will never go into service, so they know what's going on with them.
There's two fronts here. We're asking our children to do horrific things. And if you're going to ask our children to do horrific things, they should have a handle on informed decisions. They should be given all the information they need to make informed decisions going into the military, not coming out. We're a society, we're systemic. Here's what we do. We continually go to war, and we continually take our young children and ask them to do horrific things, and then we throw money at it, the problem, after they come out. We continue to build more shelters. We continue to have more drug and alcohol outreach programs, and it's needed. Don't get me wrong, we need it. But no money is spent on pre-education. I mean, we could get a handle on this and if we had some pre-education. And so I advocate for that. And I don't want anyone to live through what I lived through. And if someone would come to me and give me a handle on what I was about to get into, I would have greatly appreciated in retrospect. Not then. I think afterwards, if someone came to you and explained, look, this is horrific. You're going to see dead bodies. You're going to see blown up people. You're going to see death and destruction. You're going to see the underside of life. This is what you're going to...
No one ever said that.
Said it. They hid it.
Oh my God.
They stuck it in the back page.
Um,
And that's what my programs are about, and that's what I'm about to do.
Well, you know, I'm thinking about that. If there were programs before we went overseas that told us these things you're going to see and hear and do, you got to deal with it. When you come back, we'll be waiting for you to help you.
Right.
It would have
Right.
it would have cut down
Right.
on drug abuse, it would have
Right.
cut down on
Exactly.
suicides, it would have cut
Exactly.
down on mental illness.
Exactly, and that's what's going on today. How can you, this country, sit by and have 22 suicides a day and not have some pre-education for young people going into the military? That's ridiculous.
They're trying to help now, I mean, recently, they're really trying to help these vets to come back and get them some counseling, and
Yeah.
PTSD is
Yeah.
a big part of the VA
Yes.
now. The big problem with it is,
Well,
the big problem is that a lot of them don't take advantage of it because of the stigma of admitting that, they need help.
yeah.
I'm going to move around. You hear me? It's, hang on, no, listen, let me do it.
Yeah. Our American flag felt when we said PTSD.
Oh, we're talking. Damn.
So I believe in pre-education. That's what all my education programs are about. And it's about that flag, and it's about America, and it's about a strong America, and it's about being truthful and forthcoming. You know, I'm
something?
not against the Army. I know we need an Army. I'm not against having a strong country, and
The event that we met at, that was a good way of getting the word out.
well, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to walk across New York State and advocate for the new education program that I've initiated this year in 2018, the experience of the American soldier. And I'm going to advocate for each town. In every town, there's veterans. Every town. And every veteran sitting at home just is waiting for someone to ask, what's your story?
Yes.
Tell me about, what did you do? Why can't that person in every little town in America go to their school and talk to their students? And in conjunction with a program like the experience of the American soldier, I guarantee he would just love to be asked. I don't know a veteran who would not want to be asked. Like, you're part of history. Tell us. They'll bring out memorabilia. They'll go into the garage in the basement and take out an old box and bring out memorabilia.
This thing, that part of it, bringing veterans into schools
Yeah.
and talking to them, like that should be mandatory.
Exactly. This is what I'm advocating for 30 years. And now I brought a video for you to watch. And when I decided to put this program together, see, I'm tired. People are not listening to me. Our educators are not listening to me. Our elected officials are not listening to me for 30 years. So I'm on my own here. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I'm an army of one. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to walk across New York State, 70 years old, 100% disabled veteran. Someone's got to pay attention to me. Someone's got to listen to me. And when they say, old man, why are you walking? I said, I'm glad you asked me that question. Old man with the ponytail. I'm glad you asked me that question. And I'm going to say, look, this is what we need. We need to have education. So I've put together, in a minute I'll tell you how this all came about, but I brought you a video to watch, and it's about a 3-minute video, 3.5-minute video, and I want you to watch it, and people have come together, and when I tell you the people that have come together, you'll be amazed at the story behind it and how this all came about. And it's the idea of combining education with our social issues and having a reality-based education program, not just passing tests with numbers. Let's talk real reality. And so I put together this little promo video for you to
We're gonna
watch.
see it now?
Yeah, can we please watch the video? I'm no longer a victim. I am a survivor. My name is Frank Romeo, and I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I've suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not pro or anti-war. I'm about the reality of war and what it does to us as people, individuals, and society as a whole. I was 18 years old right out of high school, and I went to Vietnam, and I was not prepared for living in the jungle and the rice paddies. I had no idea where Vietnam was, where Southeast Asia was, and I had no idea what military life was like. And I think that's the case with a lot of young veterans today, future veterans that are not prepared. My vision is to change how we see war, the preparedness of our young people for war, and I think only then we'll be able to help them when they come out. The veterans coming out today are struggling, which has a cause and effect on our society. They push it down into their subconscious and they hide their feelings and emotions. It will erupt, it will fester, and eventually it will surface. We have 22 suicides a day in the veteran community, which is really unacceptable and unheard of. They're also having a problem with assimilating back into society and becoming homeless. You know, he was a person and he had a life. And I think until we deal with the mental health of our veteran community, we're not going to be able to deal with the homeless issue. Being prepared for the military, I think, is vital. It's what I've been doing for the past 30 years, trying to prepare young people for the reality of war. The mental health of our veteran community is at risk. The Walk with Frank is a serious attempt to change the mentality of how we approach war. I feel we owe it to our young people to be transparent. They may be a little more prepared to handle these issues when leaving the military. As I turn 70, I plan to walk across New York State, 750 miles, living in homeless shelters and eating in soup kitchens, to live the life of our most precious members of society, the homeless veterans suffering from PTSD. I'm making the documentary about the walk to reach a larger audience. I feel that this documentary is maybe the most important film of its kind as an educational tool to inform our young students about the realities of war and what to expect. We're a society that waits for a person to get hit by a car and then we put up the stop sign. This is not acceptable any longer. I've been dealing with PTSD for 50 years, and dealing with it has fueled my journey. If you have it in your heart to support me, please go to walkwithfrank.org and find out how you could be a part of this special project.
The best thing I could say, outstanding. Very well done.
Thank you.
Wow.
So I decided to do this 2 years ago. So it's in the, and I leave in 2 months. I leave March 1st. And I decided to do this 2 years ago. And I told 3 people, Mike and Nadine Masiello, my oldest friends in the world, and Ray Bettinelli, a person that handles my social media, and he's always helped me with my project. And then I just let it go at that, and I went through the workings of it, and I started putting it together and putting it together. I went to my high school reunion 2 years ago, my 50-year high school reunion. And there at the reunion, of course, I saw all the draft dodgers, and I saw all the anti-war protesters, and of course I saw veterans and everything, and we got to talking, and I told them what I'm doing. I told them, look, I've been doing this for 30 years, and I'm finding there's a need to get this message out there. There's still a need for it. And I have these education programs that I want to talk to people about. So I decided to walk across New York State to get attention, right? Who really wants to walk across New York State? So I figured, you know what? Old man's going to walk across New York State, live in the shelters, and I'm going to get attention and bring attention and awareness to these issues. Well, my alumni, my classmates from Bayshore High School, this is a Bayshore High School reunion, got together and formed the Walk with Frank team. They come from all over the country. I have doctors, lawyers, I have social media, I have the owner of a professional ball team. They've all come together and created the Walk with Frank team to help me do this. And they're from all over the country. And they're going to, there's a support team when I'm walking on the road. I have education people. I have principals of schools that are getting the word out about the education programs. I have elected officials that are helping me all over the country to make this walk work. And we're going to get the message out. And we're going to tell people about what needs to be addressed. I'm advocating for past, present, and future veterans. Our past presidents, our past veterans, of course, we honor them for their service, and we attend to the wounds of our present veterans. But what about our future veterans? It's a revolving door. We go to war, we have problems. We send our children off. So I'm advocating for them, for the future. We here in New York State have now a curriculum, the experience of the American soldier, that is not anywhere else in the country. We, as New York State veterans, our legacy is not a 20-year war or 22 suicides a day. Our legacy now is education for future veterans. We are laying the groundwork for the future veterans, for our children.
When you say that we have a curriculum, is it ongoing right now?
It's ongoing right now. It's being piloted this year by, once again, Bayshore School District. And my alumni have pushed for this. I have education people that are pushing for this. It is now available to any school in New York State willing to try it. The groundwork is there, and it's not extra work for them. They're just going to talk a little bit less about the war, the battle, and a little bit more about the soldier who fights in the battle.
And maybe introduce them to veterans that have been there.
And bring in veterans. Every town in America has them. Waterloo, New York. I'm going to pass through Waterloo, New York, and that is the birthplace of Memorial Day, by the way. Waterloo, New York has veterans that are going to meet me there, and they're going to join me. And we're trying to get the school district to have an event where they can Skype with the pilot program students in Bayshore High School, with Waterloo High School students, with veterans from Waterloo there.
All right, we're running out again. It's amazing. All right, we'll be back. That's a warning. Well, it's a promise.
Line, 'cause friends are friends for